the last thing I said I would teach you is a way to increase your income by 10 times. Would that be a good thing to finish up with? Yeah, sure. All right. Now, it's a very simple formula. When I started off, by the time I was 36 years old, I still remember I started off speaking, and in my first year of speaking, I got a call from a senior businessman who asked me if I would do a talk for 800 business owners in his organization. And the talk would be on the success secrets of self-made millionaires, or would I speak about self-made millionaires. So I designed a talk, and I sat down and I started to do some research, and I realized I didn't know anything about self-made millionaires, but I had 2 months before the talk. So I quickly did an enormous amount of reading, and I found that self-made millionaires, people who had started with nothing and become millionaires in one generation, had been studied exhaustively. And so I put together a talk called 21 Success Secrets of Self-Made Millionaires. And I gave this talk, and it was very well received. And over the next 20 years, I was asked to give this talk all over the world. I put it on audio, I put it on video, and I wrote a book on it, which has sold hundreds of thousands of copies in multiple languages. And countless people that I've met all over the world said that that book made me rich. The CD made me rich. It was a 1-hour talk originally. Eventually, I expanded it like an accordion. We'd give it as an all-day talk, 21 ideas. And as I began to do this, I began to think, how could I increase my productivity so that I could become a self-made millionaire as well? And as a result of all this research, I pulled together 7 steps that I could take every day. And it was based on what we call the law of incremental improvement. In Japan, they call it the principle of Kaizen, which means continuous betterment. Sometimes it's called the law of accumulation, is that each thing you learn accumulates and helps you improve in other things that you learn. And my question I started off with was, if I wanted to increase my income 10 times, and I came up with this formula, if you could increase your productivity by 0.1% per day, 5 days a week, could you do that? Well, 1/10 is 1/1000th more productive. Most people could be twice as productive just simply by focusing on the most valuable use of their time every morning. But this is just 1/1000th more productive per day. So if I said, if you could do that 0.1% per day, 5 days a week, you'd be 0.5% more productive in a week. Having become 0.5% more productive, could you do it next week? And the answer is yes. So that would be, in 4 weeks, you'd be 2% more productive. In 13 4-week months, 52 weeks, you'd be 26% more productive in the course of a year. Is that possible? And the answer is, of course it's possible. Most people could be twice as productive within 24 hours just by doing only the most valuable things they have to do. If you did it 26% a year with compounding times 10 years, at the end of 10 years, you'd be 1,004% more productive. You'd increase your income by more than 10 times. Interesting, I was in China last week, and my translator is a man named Peter Yao. And Peter started studying my materials on YouTube a decade ago when he was a security guard at night in a shopping center and come from a farm, came from a very low level, and he began to watch free videos with translation, German or Chinese characters on YouTube, and he began to learn English because he could see the characters. He actually taught himself English watching my videos, and one of my videos was on this 1,000% formula that I'm going to share with you. So I was talking on the stage to several hundred business people in China, and I was talking about this 1,000% formula, and he stopped and he translated. He said he learned this formula 10 years ago, and he didn't increase his income 10 times or 20 times. He increased his income 166 times in 10 years. He went from a poor Chinese worker to being a wealthy Chinese businessman and property owner. And he did it in 10 years. He's only in his mid-30s. So when I started to use this formula I'm going to share with you, instead of taking 10 years, it took me 5 years to increase my income 10 times. And then I kept doing it, and I increased my income 10 more times, which is 100 times. I increased my income 100 times in 10 years. And I went from rags to riches. And I couldn't believe it. And I've taught this all over the world, and people come up to me and they say, "You made me rich. That technique made me rich." So here they are, just in case you're curious. Number 1 is arise 2 hours before your first appointment or work each morning and spend 30 to 60 minutes reading in your field. Start the day, it's called the golden hour. Invest the golden hour in yourself mentally. What I do is I get up and I physically exercise, and then I read and learn every single day. Make it a habit, and I do it 5, 6, 7 days a week, and sometimes longer. But if you read 30 to 60 minutes a day, 5 days a week, you read about a book a week. A book a week will translate into about 50 books a year. The average adult does not read more than one nonfiction book in a year. If you read 50 books in a year, 30 to 50, you'll get the equivalent of a PhD in your field each year. I have read single books with a single chapter, with a single observation from an expert that have been worth $1 million to me. But you never know where you're going to get that insight. So what you have to do is keep reading lots of material. And every so often, one observation will just jump off the page at you, and your whole life will be changed. So but use the law of probabilities by reading all the time. Reading is to the mind as exercise is to the body. If you want to be physically fit, you work out with physical exercise. If you want to be mentally fit, you have to read. That's number one. Number two is rewrite your major goals in the present tense each day. I use a spiral notebook, and every day you take and turn the page and rewrite your goals. Don't rewrite them from the previous page, write them from memory. And I teach people in another area to write down 10 goals. And every day write down your 10 goals without referring to the previous page. As you write down the goals, it's called, not printing, not typing, it's called a psychoneuromotor activity, which is a big word that says it engages your whole brain when you write down a goal. There's no other way to engage your whole brain. And everything that you write down is actually automatically recorded in your mental hard drive. And it goes into your subconscious and begins working 24 hours a day. I have worked with thousands of people who've written down their goals once, and within 1 year, their life was transformed. Some people, within 1 week, their whole life was transformed by just writing down their goals. Whenever I do my coaching programs with business owners, I'll start off and I'll say, I'll take a spiral notebook, like a school notebook. I'll say, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to introduce you now to your new best friend. For the next 31 days, I want you to write down 10 goals on a separate page every day without looking back. And when you come back to the next coaching program, we'll talk about the results. People come back, 100% are just shocked at the difference that takes place in their lives when they begin writing their goals each day. If you just rewrote your goals each day, it would increase your income 1,000%. If you just read 30 to 60 minutes each day, it would increase your income 1,000% if you did nothing else. Number three is to plan every day in advance. Always work from a list and make a list of everything you have to do the next day, the night before. And planning will save you 25 to 50% of your time every single day. You'll get your 1,000% just by planning carefully before you start work. Number four is to focus and concentrate on the most valuable use of your time every single day. Select your most important tasks, start on those, and work only on those until they're complete. If you can do that, that alone will increase your income by 1,000%. Number five is to listen to audio programs as you move around. I used to say listen to audio programs in your car, but now you can download any number of educational audio programs onto your iPhone, and you can listen to them whenever you're moving around. Turn driving time into learning time. Turn exercise time into learning time. The only time, by the way, to listen to audio programs is when you're doing something else. You can't sit and listen to audio programs because it's too slow. But if you're driving, you can listen. If you're exercising, you can listen. If you're walking, you can listen. Even if you're going shopping, you can listen. Keep feeding your mind with new ideas, because one idea can make you a fortune. I remember listening to one audio program by one very smart entrepreneur in March of 2010, and he had one observation, and I built a whole seminar around that observation, and I have earned more than $2 million from that one observation since then. It was sort of like the lightning strike that's put everything together. It's sort of like sometimes electricity in a compound will change the whole compound. It was just one idea that led to a $2 million idea. But you never know where the idea is going to come from, so you have to expose yourself to lots of ideas. Number six is ask 2 questions after every event of importance, whether it's a sales call, a meeting with a client, an interview. And the 2 questions are what I call the magic questions. And these questions will make you rich. Question number 1 is, what did I do right? And then take and write down everything that you could think of that you did right in that situation. Do this immediately after. We were talking on the radio this morning. In the military, after every military exercise, they immediately do what is called an after-action report. An after-action report is the officers are forced to sit down and go through every single step of the operation that just took place, and they ask, what did we do right, and what would we do differently? What will we do differently next time? And what you're doing is you're capturing the very best things that you learned from that last experience. If you do this after every sales call, within a year, you'll have increased your sales 5 to 10 times. Within a year, you'll be one of the highest paid people in your field. If you do this after every presentation, as I used to do, if you do this after every interview, as I used to do, it's just astonishing how fast you learn and grow when you do an after-action report immediately after you have completed the event or the action. And number 7 is to treat each person like a $1 million customer. Treat each person that you meet as though they are the most important person in the world. Start with your family, start with your spouse and your children, and as you go through the day, treat everybody as if they were important. Mary Kay Ash, amazing woman who divorced, mother of 2 children, started selling cosmetics and eventually built Mary Kay Ash Cosmetics, which has made more women millionaires than any other single business in history. She said the philosophy of her company was to imagine that everybody you meet is wearing a sign, and the sign says, make me feel important, and respond to that sign that everybody is wearing. So everybody in her company was encouraged to make everybody they met feel important. If you will do that, more doors will open for you, more opportunities will open for you, but the most amazing thing is this, is when you make other people feel good about themselves, you feel better about yourself as well. As you make other people happy, you feel happier. As we raise the self-esteem of others, your self-esteem and self-confidence goes up as well. So from now on, treat every person as though this person could buy $1 million worth of your product if you just treated them nicely. And sometimes I see people who will do this with prospective customers, but then they'll treat waitresses and taxi drivers with disrespect. The mark of a superior person is the way they treat people who cannot do them any good. So you can always tell a top person because of the way they treat people who can't do any good for them. If all you do is you treat people who you think can help you well, it means you're a different type of person than a person who treats everybody well. One of the great philosophers, Thomas Carlyle, said, you can tell a big man by the way he treats little people. And your job is just treat little people well. And so those are the 7. So let me just wrap up by saying this. And by the way, this is going to ask me to invite you to ask questions for a few minutes. So if you have any questions, there are 2 people here with microphones, and there are for the question and answer session. Let me just wrap up by saying this, is that the very best times of your life lie in the future. The highest income of your life lies in the future. The happiest moments of your life are still to come. The greatest achievements that you will ever achieve are still in the future. And that means that your future is unlimited because it's only held back by your own imagination. So I hope that these ideas have been helpful for you, and I hope you have a wonderful future. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Brian Tracy, and thanks for everyone for joining us today. And please do not lose the chance of asking questions before he leaves Dubai. So, any question?
When are you coming back?
Wow, when are you coming back?
That's a great question. I'm flying to Tehran next week to give our 2-day MBA. And then I'm flying to Irkutsk. And then I'm flying to Amili in Kazakhstan to give this 2-day MBA program. We're giving it all over the world. And we're coming back next year, probably in February, to give this 2-day MBA. And Gautam has asked me to tell you that if you would like some information on this program, write MBA on your business card and drop it off at the back when you leave. This program is incredible. We have people who literally double the size of their business in as little as 30 days after this program. But it's certainly within a few weeks or a few months, because it teaches you all the things to stop doing and all the things to start doing. And many of them are actually revolutionary, but they're very simple, they're very practical, and they're used by the best companies in the world, the most profitable companies. So that's when I'll be back. And if you're interested, just let us know, and we will let you know. Do you know the date? We don't know the date exactly, but it's probably going to be in February. February 2014. We haven't set the date.
Thank you, Brian. Before we start with the questions, please, we have the feedback form on the tables. We'd be very grateful if you can fill them in after the Q&A session. And we have a question over here.
Right here. My name is Adnan. I'd like to thank you first for joining us. It's been a great pleasure meeting you, and it's been great, very informative. I just have a question where in business in general, we find that most of the successful stories are taking place in the US, and they excel very fast. Is there any reason for that? And number two is, all these advices that you have given us, are they applicable in certain geographical and cultural, certain cultures in the world? Just these are my questions.
Well, I do a lot of research. I've done a lot of research on the countries in the Gulf. Dubai, yesterday in Qatar, but I've also worked in Bahrain, Saudi Arabia, and Iraq, obviously, and Oman, and other countries. And what I have found is that in these countries, the importance of relationships is probably as great as any other country in the world. Chinese have a word called guanji, and guanji means relationships or connections. And so the most important thing that I think I've emphasized here is spending time with your customers and prospective customers and building high-quality relationships with them, and then doing everything possible to maintain the quality of those relationships. And that seems to be the truth worldwide. So yes, they are cross-cultural. Now, it's interesting, America always tends to be 5 years ahead of Europe in terms of business innovation because of the cultural climate, the dynamism, the entrepreneurship. Then the ideas come to Europe. And what they say, and they've tracked this, is that they usually start on the East Coast, new ideas in business, New York, Boston, Philadelphia, and then they jump to the West Coast. And then they develop, and they could move back across the country, and then they jump to Europe. And then from Europe, they go down into the Middle East, and from the West Coast, they go to the Far East. So yes, you're a little bit behind, but that's normal and natural. It's the same as with technology. But the basic ideas are the same. Produce good quality products, have good relationships with your customers, continually upgrade your skills, and the one thing they found was the best investment of all that a business can make is to increase the quality of its products. In other words, make its customers happier. And if you do that, that will work everywhere. It works here for you and I, it works everywhere in the world. Because all of us are human beings, and we all want to be happy. And we all want to be happy with the products and services that we buy. And if you'll make me happy with the products and services you sell me, I will buy from you and buy again and bring my friends.
Yes, you have a question over here.
Yes.
Paul Hawkins, HR consultant. Thanks very much, Brian. It's always a pleasure having you here. I've been reading your books and listening to your motivational tapes for a long, long time. My question is following. I think some of us might agree that if the same audience came here and we were lucky enough to have you here again in a year's time, a number of them wouldn't have changed at all.
No.
Maybe you could give us some reasons for that. There's a human factor involved. The second thing is, what do you think is the key most factor which triggers off a change, a transformation in the way we do things?
Good questions, answers for the questions. There are three things that hold us back, three enemies, and these enemies are the same enemies worldwide. Number one is the comfort zone, is we become comfortable doing things in a certain way and we are reluctant to change. And you see, I'm sure you teach that in HR consulting, is people fall in love with a method of doing things, and even if it doesn't work, even if they're getting bad results, even if it makes them unhappy, they keep doing it. Perfect example is, look what happened with BlackBerry. They came out with the iPhone in 2006. BlackBerry had 50% of the world business market, and they dismissed it as though it was a toy. They said there was no value to that, and they said we will always be dominant in our market because everybody wants a very complicated, expensive telephone that drives you crazy half the time, as opposed to one that's really easy and fun to use. I mean, that was real good thinking at BlackBerry. And they just stayed in their comfort zone and made no effort to upgrade their technology, made no effort to learn from the fact that Apple sold 50 million sets at $600 a piece within 12 months. And because they were in a comfort zone. And if you stay in a comfort zone too long, what happens is you just are passed over. The second factor that holds us back is the path of least resistance. Remember I said starting something new is the hardest thing of all. We do everything possible to justify not changing. And you must, when you present a new idea to people, it'll automatically trigger all the reasons why it won't work. The path of least resistance is that human beings always seek the fastest and easiest way to get the things they want. And so people are always looking for easy ways. And if you suggest changing or doing something new or different, that's difficult. It's hard to do something new, and they will fight you at every step of the way. The third factor is the fear of failure. They're afraid that if they try something new, what if it doesn't work? And what we're doing now is working. What if we try something new? So those are the three factors. So the question is, why and how do people engage in transformation? And the answer goes back to the research that you read, Paul. It's called a significant emotional experience. Something happens that really gives people a jolt. They get fired from a job, their company goes bankrupt, their market share drops like JCPenney or something else by 80%, and it really gives them a smack in the face, and this significant emotional experience causes them to jag into a new way of thinking. It opens them up to maybe there's a better way to do this. But the significant emotional experience is usually very painful. Very painful, and without that, it's like a person who works and works and works, and finally, in their age 55, they're estranged from their spouse, and their children hate them and are drug addicts, and they have a heart attack, and they almost die. And that significant experience, they come back and afterwards they're a totally different person. Suddenly they have a perspective on what's truly important in life, and it's not work. And they change their family, change everything. So unless people have that significant emotional experience, it's very hard for them to change because of the power of those first three that I told you. So just be alert to those. You'll see them everywhere. Yeah.
We have questions on the table, 2 questions.
Hi, Brian. How are you? My name is Sushma.
How are you?
Every time I see you, you keep coming up with such great content, and it's like you're always coming up with innovative ideas and different techniques. My question is, how do you remember all of this? Do you have any tips on memory retention and just, you know, because it amazes me every time. You know, I know that you're a genius, but just how do you remember all of this?
Remember, you're probably smarter than me. If we took IQ tests, you'd probably beat me. Most of the people in this room would beat me. But I found that the key is preparation. Preparation and repetition. So what I do is I prepare and prepare. And even though I've shared these ideas before, I got up early this morning. I got in late yesterday, midnight from Qatar, and I still prepared and prepared all these notes. And what that does is, I call it fluffing up your mental pillow. So you fluff up a pillow. By preparing, you fluff up your mental pillow so that the ideas are available to you. So it's just repetition. It's not a matter of being particularly smart. It's just doing it over and over again. Well, I think the most important thing in a subject, and I really urge people, is don't ever try to learn something that you don't really enjoy, because you'll be demotivated and you won't remember anything. And don't try to learn something that you can't use right away. This basic research on this is, it's got to be usable. You've got to think, as I read this, geez, this is neat stuff. I can use this. This is applicable. Because if it's not applicable, it won't be enjoyable to learn. And if it's not something that you like, if I was starting to talk about, financial analysis and how you can dramatically improve the results of certain parts of your business by changing the algorithm that you use to measure the response rate, I mean, most of the people in this room would go to sleep because you're not interested in the subject. So I'm always put my heart into subjects that I really care about. And you can tell I really care about these ideas because I have seen so many people who have taken these ideas and accomplished extraordinary things. After years of struggle, they've just literally done wonderful things with their business and their lives. And they say, nobody ever told me this before. And there's no place to learn this stuff before. So I see myself, my job is to aggressively look for these ideas and then put them into a very palatable form and give them to as many people as possible. And so my enthusiasm probably affects the way that you accept these ideas.
Thank you, Brian, very much for the lovely speech and the valuable information that you shared with all of us. I've been around, I've traveled a lot, done a lot of business. I'm a marketing person, and I'm not here to market myself, but I always face one particular challenge in all and most of the companies that I work for, starting from Canada down to the Middle East. And my experiences are as follows. In the West, people do not like to experiment as much as they should outside the borders of the Atlantic. In the Middle East, we've got that as a positive because they're always constantly experimenting. But the only thing that I've seen as a major difference is you got a lot of positive people in the West as compared to the Middle East, as a way of thinking. So how do you convert people to become more of the positive thinkers?
Well, this goes, I started off my career giving a 3-day seminar called The Psychology of Achievement, which has become the best-selling audio program, book, and video training program in the world. It's given all over the world. And basically it talked about that. And it talks about how your early childhood experiences affect you. And if you have positive childhood experiences, when your parents continually encourage you, then you'll be a very positive person when you grow up. And if you don't, you won't. And the research, unfortunately, says the first 3 to 5 years forms the personality of the adult. And it's very hard to change an adult if the first 3 to 5 years were with a parent or parents that were critical, demanding, shouting, unsupportive. And so my friend Jim Rohn, when he was asked this question, why is it that some people are negative, he said, I don't know, that's just the way they are. And there's nothing you can do. One of the rules, we were sharing this in Doha yesterday, is that people don't change. People don't change their basic character and personality after about 16 or 17 years old. They just sort of like are concrete in their personality fixes. Now, they can learn new skills and become much more competent, but they cannot change their basic personality. If they're negative when they're 16 or 17, they'll be negative when they're 47 or 57. And there's nothing you can do. So the rule is don't expect people to change. Don't try to change them. Don't hope that they will change. Just accept people the way they are. They're not going to change. I have 4 wonderful children, all adults now. And I learned this before my first child was born. And Barbara and I just made a decision that we would encourage our children to develop their potential, in whatever they wanted. But we would never judge them, and we would never demand anything from them. We would always tell them, whatever you do, we back you 100%. And so our children grew up with total self-acceptance. And they have confidence and self-esteem that's just wonderful to see. Because we knew that what happened in the first 3 to 5 years would determine what they would be as adults. And now we see them as adults, and it worked. You know, if you tell your children you love them and how wonderful they are all during the first 3 to 5 years, they have a concrete foundation of personality. But if, unfortunately, that didn't happen, then you meet a lot of people who are negative, critical, suspicious, and these go back to childhood, and you can't change them.
Hi.
Yes, sir.
My name is Mohammed, and I'm a realtor, plus run a security business as well. I just have a concern, which is how do you set aside priorities between professional and personal goals? Because sometimes your personal goals or priorities, which are inclusive family, they turn out to raise blockage in your professional priorities.
Yes.
So what's the key?
Well, sometimes, in Doha, we talked about this. The question is, if you're a professional tightrope walker and you're walking on a wire, how often do you balance? All the time. And it's the same thing with balancing personal and professional goals. The first thing is to be really clear about your business goals and then focus on your work. Work all the time you work. The reason people, especially men are the biggest offenders of this, women not at all. The reason men don't spend as much time with their families and children is they say, well, I'm so busy, I've got so much to do. It's because you're wasting so much time at work that you bring your work home. There's a little story about the little girl who goes to her mother and says, Mommy, why is it that Daddy brings work home all the time and does work in the evenings and doesn't spend any time with us, with the family? And she said, well, honey, you have to understand, Daddy's got so much work to do, he can't get it done at work. So he has to bring it home. And she says, well, why don't they put him in a slower class? Well, if you don't work all the time you work and on your top priorities, you're going to end up in a slower class in life. And so that's the balance. But I made a decision When I got married, got married when I was 35, and I told Barbara that she and our family would take precedence over everything. And they always have. And there's never been a question. If I've had, and sometimes it's cost me a lot of money to choose because of time, but I've never hesitated. There's never been 1 second of choice. Always they come first. And they know that. Now I'm going to focus on my work, get my work done. But if there's a need for my family always comes first. And so my children know this as well. It's been clear to my children. So my family life has been really good. I'm a very happy person.
Hi, Brian. My name is Deepak. Thanks for all this wonderful and wealth of knowledge and practical information. Brian, I have a question. Like in transformation process, like as you say, like person will, if it is he's a negative, will remain negative. If it's a positive,
the transformation process.
Yeah, transformation,
right?
self-transformation process, or if you expect somebody else to transform.
Yes.
Compelling reason, like strong why.
For what? For changing?
Yeah, for changing. How important?
Well, it can be a shock that your current way of interacting is not working. And it could be the loss of a job. You could be fired from a job or lose all your money. Or your business can collapse. But because of the comfort zone, because of the path of least resistance and so on, it has to be a real shock. It's almost like a mental collision that you suddenly question and realize that what you're doing is not working. I've had a couple of these in my lifetime that have been very helpful to me. But as Peter Drucker once said, it's not that miracles don't happen, it's just that you cannot count on them. And so the idea that somebody will change is a miracle. And you cannot base your life or your work or your decisions. So in business, the rule is only hire nice people. Only hire people that you like. Only work with people that you like. If you are working with a negative person, it just takes all the joy out of your work. And so just make a decision, I'm not going to work with difficult people. I'm not going to have them as clients or customers, and I'm not going to have them as employees. I'm certainly not going to marry them. So that's all I can tell you.
Thank you. Thanks.
No simple answers.
We have one more question to go.
Hi, Brian. I'm Hazel. I'm in the marketing and I work for a company, an airline. I just have a few questions. One of it is that you said you can't change people, but the purpose that we are here to change ourselves from your talk.
Yes.
So can you explain that a little bit
Well,
more?
I mentioned this earlier. You can learn new skills. But it's like a car. You cannot change a car's engine by changing the paint on the outside. You can learn new skills. If you're ambitious and you're positive and you want to be more successful and you're eager to learn and apply new ideas, there's no limit to what you can do. But your basic personality, that's like your eye color. It's like your height. It's even like your sex. You cannot change these. These are basic parts that are programmed into your personality. So don't try to change people. If people are lazy when they're young, they'll be lazy 50 years later. If people are dishonest, they'll be dishonest. If people are unorganized, they'll be disorganized. However, if they have good qualities and good ambitions, you can teach them all kinds of skills. Skills are very different from personality.
Yeah. And secondly, you have given us some brilliant motivational and improvement ideas. We were listening, writing down, concentrating. Do you have anything written down? Because they were all in points.
Well,
Brian, we actually
Hazel, actually, we have a whole series of books and CDs and courses that are available out here in the lobby. And these are some of the best-selling and most popular learning programs in the world, and they're just jammed with ideas. When I first started producing the first audio program, I listened to other audio programs where you listen for an hour and they had one idea. I resolved that if you listen to an hour from me, you'll have 50 ideas. And so these programs are loaded with great ideas on self-confidence, goal setting, selling, time management. So please take a look at them on your way out.
That answers your question, and we also have a video we'll be posting on the Dubai Media City Facebook page, and of course on YouTube. You're most welcome to view it again. I'm sure it's so worth it. Again, please do fill in the feedback form. And on behalf of the TCOM Media Cluster and the Right Selection, we thank you very much for joining us. We thank you, Brian Tracy. And as I think it's Chinese, thank you. Thank you very much. It's been such a pleasure. We really appreciate it. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. Shukran. Shukran. Thank you. Thank you.
am gonna become rich in 5 years, and you will see. Just like Brian in 30 years.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Brian. Thank you. Thank you.
I just wanted to say a little bit about the event I've just witnessed. Truly inspirational. Really was a great speaker with some really, really positive and definite things that I can do and take into my career and make myself more successful in the future. So I really appreciate the time and the opportunity.
It's been an amazing opportunity by TCOM and the media cluster to attend Brian Tracy, who has been a mentor for quite a long time. And having the exposure of listening to him directly, face-to-face, going through a Q&A session, I'm certain that it's going to be a life turner. I thank the TCOM investments and the media cluster for creating an event like this, and I'm sure that a lot of people who attended this event will highly benefit out of it.
I found this program extremely interesting, and I'm sure that it was very useful for the other participants too. I'd like to thank Knowledge Village and TCOM for giving us this opportunity for listening and attending such a wonderful program.
We came to the Brian Tracy event organized by TCOM. It was a very interesting event, a lot to learn from Brian, and it is always a pleasure to come to events which start on time and finish on time. It was definitely very helpful to learn a lot of new things from them.
This was my first seminar to attend, which was conducted by Brian Tracy. I have been a huge Brian Tracy fan for over 7 years now, and his speech was absolutely phenomenal. I highly recommend it for anybody who would like to learn something outside the academic sphere and outside the work environment and really add value to themselves in terms of personal development.
The insights and the knowledge he's submitting is always in a very smooth and is a very organized way that speaks directly to the mind. That's why I always like his presentations. It's simple techniques and simple rules that, if applied diligently, can produce amazing results.
I've been a Brian Tracy fan for over 20 years. I still have the Psychology of Excellence tape set that he produced years and years ago. I've still got it on tape, and I was so excited to see him today because although I've read many of his books and listened to his tapes, and I even got video sets of his, I've not actually seen him before live, and it was just fantastic today to see him here in Dubai, and I'm very much looking forward to him coming back again in February 2014. Come back soon, Brian.